Last year, Matt Colville and MCDM did a Kickstarter for a monster book called Flea Mortals. I did a Kickstarter spotlight when it was going on and did very well. 27,000 backers for the book, made $2 million. Really big Kickstarter. And I'm very, very lucky that one of my good friends, James Intercasso, works at MCDM and is actually the lead designer, lead editor of Flea Mortals. And I went to my friend James, as one does with one's friends, and I said, hey, James, you better not F up those vampires. I love vampires, and I want to see some kick-ass vampires in Flea Mortals. So don't you screw up the vampires. And James said, well, how about you do the vampires, smart ass? And I was like, and what are you going to say? No, I'm not going to do vampires for your $2 million monster book. When someone asks you if you're going to do the vampires in a $2 million monster book for MCDM, you say yes. So I said, absolutely, I'll totally do that. And then I got really scared because now I've got to be the one that makes monsters that don't suck, right? So I spent a fair bit of time building monsters. Thought vampires, I think vampires might be my favorite monster, and I don't feel like they have been served well in all different RPG products. I don't think they're served well at all in the monster manual. So I was very excited to work on this project and very eager to do it. And I did it. And I sent my monsters to James. And James said, thank you very much. And then I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, oh my God, he hates my vampires. James hates my vampires. They didn't work at all. And then he's like, no, actually they did really well. And I was like, oh, good. And so what MCDM has been doing is they have been putting out play tests of their monsters to Kickstarter backers. And I talked to James and said, hey, can I talk about this on the show? And he said, absolutely. Talk about it on the show as much as you want. So everything I'm talking about, he gave me the thumbs up to talk about. And I wanted to show you my vampires for Flea Mortals. So this is from packet 4. They've been putting out playtest packets. Each one is a good chunk of monsters, 50 pages roughly of monsters that they're putting out there. And this is like their public playtest to the Kickstarter backers to say, hey, we've tested these. They have gone through design, they've gone through development, they've gone through play testing, but we want you guys to have a look at them as well. And they've been putting them out in these semi-public playtests. It's you and your 26,999 other friends that backed the Kickstarter. And I was really nervous because I'm like, oh man, oh look, they even have a table of contents here. My vampires made the cut. Here they are. So there's lots of different monsters in here. I'm not going to talk about all the monsters. I thought you can go see it, all different kinds of fun, cool monsters, all different size, and all of these have been great. But again, 27,000 people are seeing this. I don't really have to do a lot of promo. But what I would like to do is talk about the design, talk about the vampires that I have in here, show them off, and talk about some of the design that I put into it. I thought that would be an interesting thing to talk about. So I was commissioned to do 4 vampires. 3 of them are in this book and are going to be in Flea Mortals. A 4th vampire, a lower challenge rating vampire, was a specialist vampire that is in an adventure. I think it's an adventure that is coming out that MCDM is publishing. So there are 3 different kinds of vampires. A redo of the vampire spawn, slightly more powerful vampire spawn that feels a little bit more vampire-y. A straight vampire, your straight traditional vampire. And a really powerful solo vampire, in this case, a named vampire named after a creature that is in Matt Colville's game, Count Rodar von Glauer. The campaign that Matt Colville uses for Van Glauer is, in fact, his Chain of Acheron campaign that he ran. And Van Glauer is the stat block for that campaign. In that case, I got a little bit of the lore about what this vampire is like and then did the design of Van Glauer around the lore that I got, recognizing that this is intended to be a very reskinnable, powerful kick-ass kick-ass vampire that you can use in any of your games. So let's take a look at him. The vampire spawn, slightly higher than the vampire spawn that is in the monster manual. CR5 instead of CR4. 112 hit points, so a fair number of hit points. All the kinds of things that you would say. 5 should be what I say. So actually that's pretty beefy. Yeah, it's about 20 CR, 20 hit points per CR. A little less, a little more, right? 20 per CR would be 100. So hit points are a little bit higher for its challenge rating. Lots of different things: acrobatics, stealth, persuasion, intimidation, perception. So I wanted this to be a pretty good low CR vampire. Your straight run-of-the-mill type 1 vampire, right? Makes 2 claw attacks, and they can replace attack with bite. So they are able to attack a little bit more often than the typical vampire spawn attacks. +7 to hit, nice high attack bonus. 11 slashing damage, and the target is grappled. While grappled, the medium and smaller creature doesn't have the spawn speed, so it can grab you and then run with you. while you're grappled. It can pull away. Does 11 slashing damage on that hit. So it can do 22 points of damage at CR5 with just the claws. But it could also instead do a bite. The bite does 7 piercing and 7 necrotic. And the 7 necrotic, your hit points are reduced by an amount equal to this. So one of the things that I wanted to do with this vampire spawn is say that the different levels of vampires have different levels of life drain. The vampire spawn, when it hits you, drains your life, and you can get that restored with a long rest. You can also get it restored with curative spells that let you get your hit points up. But we'll see the other vampires, you can't just sleep it off. It actually gets harder. The other thing I wanted with a vampire spawn was speed. I really sat down and said, what is it like to be a vampire? What kind of things do we expect from a vampire? For low vampires, their charm probably isn't that good, but they're still fast, and they still are strong, and they hit hard. So, which is why they have like a strength of 18 and a dex of 18. They're both strong and fast. Vampires are strong and fast. And a charisma is not bad. But inhuman speed. As a bonus action, they can move up to their speed. So that means they can really, really move fast. They can really zip around. I think one thing that changed in the design is I used to let this not provoke opportunity attacks. Probably a bit too much, particularly a lot of these, they're just zipping around like TIE fighters. So it'll take an opportunity attack, but that's okay. A, opportunity attacks are fun for players to take. And B, it has a lot of hit points, so it can take some opportunity attacks and not get totally screwed. So that's the low-level vampire spawn. Now we look at the straight vampire. And the straight vampire, lots of hit points, 200 hit points, AC 18. This is more like your Strahd level vampire if you threw some legendary resistances onto it. You notice it doesn't have a whole big block of like the things that bother a vampire. Instead, it's all stuck into like the resting place. When it drops to 0 and it's not in sunlight, running water, or its resting place, it can teleport to its resting place. The vampire is then paralyzed until they take a long rest. You kind of pack it all in there. It has resistance to turn undead and attacks. Makes 2 claw attacks and if possible, a bite attack. Now, these claw attacks do drain life, right? They do necrotic damage. They don't lower your hit point maximum, but they do extra necrotic damage. I really tried to think about like, what is the old first edition vampire like? I went back and looked at every vampire from every edition. So what are the cool concepts of these vampires that I think we should have? And I think vampires doing necrotic damage on hits, I think that makes sense. So they do 12 slashing damage and 10 necrotic damage, 22 points on each of its 2 claw attacks, and it can do a bite attack. The bite attack, and it can grapple, and I think it still doesn't restrain. Is that right? Moving with grappling? No, and in this case, when the full vampire hits you, it restrains you. So now it has advantage. So it means if it can grab with a claw, it can restrain you, hit you with another claw with advantage, and then bite you with advantage. The bite is any creature that is incapacitated, restrained, or grappled. Probably going to be grappled and restrained. And in this case, does 8 piercing damage plus 10 necrotic damage, 18 points. And that 10 necrotic damage reduces your hit point maximum. And it can only be reversed by cure ailment or a 4th level or higher, or a greater restoration spell or a similar effect. You cannot get your hit points back just by resting. I wanted it to matter a little bit more because you think about the old school level draining. This is what an old school level drain was like. That the level drain you got, and you couldn't just sleep it off. Like your hit points were, your level was lowered. Lowering levels is crazy hard to do. You got to recalculate your whole character sheet. So that doesn't make sense. But taking away hit points and having that be, you got to use a powerful spell to get rid of it. It's still very doable. The characters that are going to fight somebody like this probably have a way to get those hit points back, but you can't just sleep it off. That was the big idea. And if they die, they become a vampire spawn. Exsanguinating mist. The vampire, along with anything it's wielding, can turn into a cloud of blood-sucking mist. They flow through creatures. They can go all over the place. And through everybody they go through has to make a DC 18 con save or take 35 necrotic damage. Big piles of damages. You can basically swarm through all of the characters and drain life out of them. 35 damage a hit, DC 18. And they take half if they fail, and then transforms and moves to another spot. Fun. Now, the bonus action here is kind of fun. It has 2 different things it can do. So we have the inhuman agility. This one does move faster than the vampire spawn. So fast you cannot provoke opportunity attacks. This guy can zip all over the place, right? But the beguile is my replacement for charm. Charm, in my opinion, is very thematic for vampires and also really boring, or could be really boring for players. When you're charmed a lot, you lose a lot of agency over your character. It's not great. I was running my Curse of Strahd game recently and had a vampire that was charming all the time. And, it's okay when the players are into it, but if they're not into it, you're just taking their agency away. So I wanted something that felt like a charm. I wanted something that really felt like it still has this big ability to beguile you, but doesn't take away your agency as a character. You can still do stuff. And the beguile is the way to do it. It can target somebody as a bonus action, make them do a DC 18 wisdom saving throw. When they fail, they use their reaction to move towards an ally and make a melee attack against them. So that way you can have the fighter go away and attack the wizard, right? But it's on a reaction. So they're still back to who they were at the end of that round. They don't have to come back again. So it gives the theme of the charm. It still gives you that fun of player versus player violence caused by the fact that the vampire is charming one, but you're not taking the overall agency. If you look at the vampire from the monster manual, they can put a charm on somebody, and as long as the vampire or their allies don't attack that person, the charm never goes away, or it doesn't go away for like an hour. The vampire can keep charming him. That's really sucks, because then you're like, hey, fighter, you're charmed. Go in the corner. We'll get to you later. And that they can never break the charm. Even somebody hitting them can't get rid of it. You have to like cast spells or something to break charm. This one, as MCDM says, very action-oriented. You're getting this character to go do a thing off their turn, not taking their agency away, but still making it look like a charm. That was something I was very happy to do, very proud to see in this book, and I'm glad to see it made through. Then they have a reaction. When an ally the vampire takes damage, the vampire can command the ally to move up to their speed without provoking. So they can take damage, they can move it away. This is kind of a neat one, a little bit of a commandery sort of thing. Like you can have that. When the vampire is an ally that gets hit, it can move it away so it won't take another hit. That way, multi-attacks, you can stop a multi-attack. And kind of a fun reaction. And then there's the big guy, Rodar von Glauer, Count Rodar von Glauer, sort of like Super Strahd, right? You can think of this guy as like Super Strahd. I have the distinct privilege, my understanding, that the only monsters that killed more characters during playtesting was at first level with kobolds. But if you took we all know that first level is a really lethal level. If you took first level characters out of the playtest group for MCDM monsters, von Glauer killed more characters than anybody else by far, according to James Intercasso. He told me that. I was very proud to know that my CR19 vampire has a lot of blood under his fingernails. And that makes me happy. So, because as you know, high challenge monsters often don't. So von Glauer, big vampire, lots of things going on. One, he's got a great big life-draining greatsword that he attacks with. He's really cool. He also has these like ethereal spears that float around. One of the important things with the solo, got to make sure to be able to attack your backline characters or you're not really going to bring a threat. You don't want him to get pinned down by one frontline character. So he's got these spears. One of the other design considerations for MCDM is they don't like just straight legendary resistances. It's not bad to have monsters have a way to get rid of abilities, but it should also hurt them somehow. They should take something for that. And the idea here was that that von Glauer has these things called spears of sacrifice, that spear sacrifice. He has these spears that are floating around him. He has 3 of them, and he can destroy those to basically get rid of an ability that is on him or to make a successful check, right? There's 3 floating spheres, summon a free hand, and on his turn, no action required. When he fails an ability check or saving throw, and note his ability check and saving throw, so you can't just grapple his ass. He can automatically succeed on an ability check. That's a new one that we have to all put in there. You can destroy the spears to succeed on the ability check or saving throw instead. Once he destroys all 3 spears, he cannot use the spear, the damn attack, or spear sacrifice until the next dusk when he manifests the destroyed spear. So those are his legendary resistances, but they also serve him as weapons in the game. So you are taking away his ability to attack as you are hitting him with spells that are save or suck. A cool thing. He's immune to turn undead, because they should be immune to turn undead. He fights with Sanguinus, a life-draining greatsword manifested from shadow. He can conjure Sanguinus in his free hand on his turn, no action required. When he's killed, the sword dissipates into black mist. So he has a cool, misty, life-draining sword. He makes 2 Sanguinus attacks and then can make a Spear of the Damned attack for each spear sacrifice that he has remaining. Sanguinus is plus 12 to hit, 13 slashing, plus 14 necrotic, and it reduces their hit point maximum. And that reduction must be removed by a 4th level spell or greater, including greater restoration. So it can really suck your life out of your body. If you die, you turn into vampire spawn. Spear of the Damned, plus 12 to hit, range 60 feet, 10 force damage. And if the target is a creature, they are knocked prone and restrained as a Spear of Darkness impales them. Creature can attempt to free themselves or another creature within reach by using an action and bonus to make a DC 20 athletics check. On a success, the creature is freed. The creature is also freed if Rogar summons that spear. So he can pin someone down with a spear. Then you can also zip over to them and then start hitting him with the sword, right? He's got the Beguile, same Beguile that we talked about before. DC 19, make your friend go attack your other friend. And he can move without provoking his opportunity attack as a bonus action, which means he can attack somebody, he can move, he can throw a spear, get over them, and make more attacks and hit them really hard. Withering Stare. If he's hit by an attacker creature within 60 feet, he bores into them. The target misses a DC 20 saving throw or take 10 necrotic. He just look at you and do damage to you. Villain actions. These are the action-oriented designs of MCDM in particular. It's different than other ones. It's kind of like legendary actions, but not quite. They happen one right after the other. So he can take one action once. He can take these actions in any order, but he can only use one per round. Action 1, Bloodstained. He causes blood to explode a 20-foot radius sphere on a point he can see within 120 feet. Characters who aren't undead in the area must succeed at DC 20. Dex saving throw be Bloodstained until the end of his next turn. Rodar has advantage on attack rolls against Bloodstained creatures, and Bloodstained creatures have disadvantage on saving throws against his Beguile. Makes it easier to beguile and easier to hit. Action 2, Fire Drake. Rodar, along with anything he's wearing, turns into a large dragon made of fire. When he does, he releases any creature he was grappling. And if Rodar was grappled or restrained, the effect ends. He then flies twice his speed to an unoccupied space. During this move, he ignores difficult terrain, doesn't provoke, and can move through creatures. Each creature he moves through, DC 20 Dex saver, takes 36 fire damage. A little bit of zip around as a dragon, burn them up. Again, you should be able to hit lots of people with it. And then he returns back to his arm. It's like the Blood Mist, only it's Fiery Dragon. And then the action 3. This is you're really stuck in place. Mist of Blades. Rodar fills an area with 60 feet of him with swirling mists that heavily obscure the area. He can teleport 4 times to any unoccupied space in the mist and make a sanguinous attack against each teleport. He has advantage on these because the thick mist obscures the area, and he has blind sight. So he goes up and bang, 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 4 different targets. Again, you're not going to be able to pin this dude down. And that's free actions. He's doing 6 of those. You can see why he killed a lot of characters. That is Von Glauer. I am really happy with how he came out. I think it's really, really cool. I can't wait to see him in a big book that lots of people are going to have, and Von Glauer is going to eat well, I think. So I wanted to show those vampires off. I want to talk about the design ideas behind them. One of the things I didn't quite mention is the reason why the villain actions work the way they are is there's this concept of positioning and explosion. How do you get into the right position to begin with? How do you move around so that you're not going to get pinned down? And then how do you do something really nasty where you explode? The Mist of Blades is this really nasty explosion. Bloodstained is his way to do like a lot of control where you can, force people to have disadvantage on saving throws and he gets advantage on his attacks. It also means that even if he's engaged with a creature, if they're bloodstained, he can get normal attacks against him. His attack score is really good. And the Mist of Blades is this like, I'm just going to go around and hit all of you. You're all going to get hit by the sanguinary blade and all your hit points are going to go down. So he apparently killed a lot of guys. So that's Von Glauer. I was really happy to see that monster, and I'm very happy to show him off to you. And you will see it in Flea Mortals. It might be the most popular monster book, third-party monster book that comes out. I think it's going to be really exciting stuff. If you like the kind of work that I do, you will want to subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter, where you get a weekly D&D related email sent directly to your inbox every week, along with a free adventure generator PDF. You can support me directly on Patreon, where you get access to the Uncovered Secrets Volume 1 and 2. You get the City of Arches sourcebook, a bunch of exclusive adventures, the dedicated Discord channel, the Patreon Q&A, all kinds of great stuff for becoming a patron of Sly Flourish. Very reasonable price. You can find the link to that in the show notes below. You can also pick up any of my books, including Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, the Lazy DM's Workbook, or the Lazy DM's Companion. Thank you all very much. Have a great day, and get out there and play some D&D.